Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Index Engines Ask the Experts. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Josh Kohlhoff from Dodge County. Josh and I will be discussing the strategies and technologies that have empowered Dodge County to stay ahead of cyber threats, protect critical workloads, and most of all, maintain the trust of the community that it serves. Driven by the need to address growing cyber threats faced especially by local governments, Dodge County has emphasized the importance of securing data backups in an air-gapped cyber vault powered by CyberSense. Through our partner Dell Technologies, they leverage the Dell PowerProtect cyber recovery solution. And with the enhanced benefits of CyberSense to detect suspicious content, corruption, and ensure data integrity, as well as providing clean recovery points, it provides the best possible recovery in the event of a cyber attack. Go ahead and have you introduce yourself and your role at Dodge.
Hey, Rob, it's good to be with you today. My name is Josh Kohlhoff, as you said. I'm with Dodge County up in Wisconsin. I've been here for going on 25 years this September. I've been in my role for roughly 10 years. I've been primarily in charge of backup storage and recovery for the past 7 years. And a little bit about Dodge County. We're a rural county in Wisconsin. We have about 1,000 employees, and medium-sized county. And yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Right. Safe to assume that you're a Packers fan.
That is safe to assume. Packers, Badgers, Brewers, Bucks. Yep. All the
Nice.
above. Yep.
Very nice. Yep. All right. All good. Now that we got the informalities out of the way, let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity. From a Dodge County perspective, how has the cybersecurity landscape changed? Specifically for whether it be your role or just Dodge County in general.
Well, since I have been here for quite some time, it's changed quite a bit. You never used to have to worry about people getting into your backup systems and completely wiping you out and having to start from scratch. But, in the past, 7-8 years, that threat has become very real. I've been very familiar with organizations that have been completely wiped out. And that's a legitimate threat that costs taxpayers a lot of money if that happens. And, it's never a good thing to have your name in the paper as to, Dodge County shut down for a cyber event, or any organization for that matter, not just Dodge County. But, in that regard, that's become a really, really big threat in the past couple of years. And we're just trying to keep ahead of everything like everybody else, and trying to implement what we can for the budget that we're presented, and, go from there.
How do you typically defend, or how have you set up to essentially defend against some of these modern threats?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, because we are, local government, we don't have an unlimited budget, obviously, but, we're implementing, any kind of, technology we can. We have a SOC, we have, the backup in multiple locations. We have, the vault for one of the, big items that we have in this regard is, it's a fail, it's in theory a fail safe for, a catastrophic event. So, we try to increase our security posture. We have, organizations that monitor our posture from the outside, and there's different tools that governments can implement that are free of charge, and we try to implement those as best we can, and that's kind of what we do, and keep up to date with our patching and all our updates, right. And keeping our systems up to date, and that's not storing our passwords at an unprotected spreadsheet on the shared drive of our network. It's things like that.
Nobody does that.
Yeah, no one does that, not at all. But it's an ever-changing environment, and it's an environment that you're always learning things on, and we try to keep up with it the best we can.
Yeah, security posturing, it entails so much these days, and everything from what you just mentioned, from the the preventative side, right? Obviously standing at the front door trying to, literally wand every piece of information that may come through the door. But how do you really look at monitoring, right? So there's so much information coming in and out. You're managing an entire county that's probably a very active, portal for your customers, as well as just the data that sits behind. What are you doing to monitor against threats?
Well, I mentioned earlier we do have a SOC that we've implemented,
Yeah.
which does help a lot. And there's a weekly report that we get from a government agency that is constantly scanning our environment and making us aware
Good.
of things that they're seeing from the outside looking in. And it's obviously we have virus protection, and we monitor those whenever they come in, obviously. And it's and then the index engine reports that we get every day from our scan backups, we go over those. And you hope that you don't ever see detection found, but if you do,
Right.
you have to investigate it and find out what's going on. And that's how you kind of try the best you can to keep ahead of it.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that. I do want to talk about that a little bit later, but I think a good follow up here for you is with municipalities, it is one of the number one threats currently, or targets rather, for threat actors. Was there some kind of compelling event that maybe happened to another municipality or somewhere in a neighboring? You don't have to name names. No need to
No,
embarrass anybody. But
no.
but it was is that what made you go out and look, especially specifically at Dell's PowerProtect cyber recovery solution?
Sure. So it was right around the 2019 area, and we were at an executive briefing out in Boston, looking at a number of technologies from Dell, and one of the technologies was their cyber vault. And my boss at the time looked at me and he said, "I don't want to be in the paper," because there was
Yeah.
just an event that a different local government was in the paper for something about how they were shut down, and they were at a non-operational level. And he's like, I have no interest in being in the paper.
Mhm.
So let's we need to do this. And we had already been a Dell backup customer at the time, and it just was a perfect fit for that. And that's kind of what drove it. And we just didn't. We had we have a DR location, obviously, but we didn't have anything like this, which I think everybody should have something like this. As you hear stories all the time about oh, my data's gone. Well, don't you have it in a secure location? Well, no, we don't have that. Oh, well, good luck. And we didn't want to be one of those,
Right.
because we have to answer to taxpayers here. If they come to pay their taxes and we're like, well, no, sorry, we can't take it because our systems are down, that's not a good thing. So.
Right. And I've heard some examples of whether it be a municipality or even just a retailer or somebody, where they literally have to go back to paper, and they have to start taking in paper. The paper then has to be either scanned or manually inputted back into the new system. So it does create a significant disruption, both at the customer level, as well as from an administrative level, right? You now have you're prone to error for everything. So, yeah, I understand. You having to, wanting to stay out of the papers, these compelling events, and they are rather compelling. To your point, everything from data erasure to data exfiltration. I'm sure the last thing people want is another one of those letters in the mail that says, "Yeah, you've been compromised."
Right.
Not,
Yep.
not a lot we can do about that. So, let's talk. You mentioned just kind of taxpayers and everything. What are some of the workloads that you are protecting for the county?
Sure. So we have a number of different departments here. Obviously, we have a county nursing home. We have a a sheriff's department, we have a jail, we have a human services department, and land records, everything. So we have any kind of data you can imagine here, really. I mean, we have, between file servers and VMs and, databases. We have unstructured data, all our, vital record information. We have, just a barrage of different data here that we're protecting. It's just many different kinds of data and many different, types of data between healthcare and law enforcement. And, it's just a heavy mix of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I can only imagine if all of a sudden the jail's database was gone.
Yeah, that would not be a good day in this department.
Problem, no.
Yeah, no, not at all, not at all. And it's
not a problem at all.
Yeah.
And so you definitely have those. You were mentioning earlier, you have your DR site and everything. So there's a lot of data protection behind the scenes for to protect all of these workloads, whether they be active, whether they be backups, et cetera. But there's a lot basically going on behind the scenes to protect those workloads with the addition of the cyber recovery vault. So let's talk a little bit about the implementation. So how was the implementation of the cyber recovery vault, integrating it with your data protection solution? Talk a little bit about that and how that went.
Sure. Well, as I had said, we had been a customer for probably 2 years at the time, when we chose to go with the the cyber recovery system. So, I mean, it was a perfect fit, with us, and we were going to do a kind of a staged implementation. We were going to do it, put the vault in and then, get this piece and then get this piece and, then eventually add index engines. And then, as we got into it, that those phased approaches kind of started to go a little faster because we're like, well, since we do have this, we probably should do this. And, it took probably 6 months by the time we got everything in. I mean, it didn't take that long for the install. Obviously, Dell did the install, and our partner did the data domain install and things like that. But I mean, it was a pretty seamless install. And to get index engines installed, and we did get that shortly. That was towards the end of that 6 months implementation time. And then we were a fairly early adopter of this, so we've grown with it, and it every little often, or every little bit rather, they'll be like, well, this has changed, so we have to do this, and that's fine, and we just roll with it. And we've since added different things to the vault to make it easier, and it's been an evolving process, but it's been pretty seamless, and it's been, we haven't had any issues with it. So it's been
good.
really good and, really solid. So.
And has it changed your approach at all to cybersecurity? Whether it be kind of what your front end posturing looks like, as well as your data backend?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you add a new, VM, you have to make sure that, is it going to the vault? Is it going to DR? Is it, is it being scanned in the vault? I mean, we don't scan everything in the vault. We scan most everything in the vault, but there is some things that we don't scan just because of, logistics and, budget for one. But it, you have to make sure that everything's protected. It's not just as simple as, we're going to spin up a machine and call it a day anymore. It's, you got to make sure it's added to all the policies, and, it's just, there's extra steps, and there's extra, there's just a lot of extra these days to make sure that everything's, all your bases are covered.
Yeah. So you mentioned just, spinning up a new VM and everything. How difficult is it to, add a workload, to the vault, and just to expand your data protection footprint? especially when it comes to cyber security and recovery.
Sure. It's not difficult. It's just, a step that you have to check on your checklist. And, to make sure that, because I'm not the only network administrator, there is another network administrator. So if he has a machine, he has to make sure that he's got it added. And the data protection side is kind of my baby. So I kind of go and double check, like, okay, was this added to the workloads? Was this added to the policy? And there's different policies that we have. There's a DR policy, there's a vault policy, there's a backup policy. They could be added to all three, but they might be added to just one or two. So it's just to keep track of everything and make sure that everything's covered and everybody's on the same page. And sometimes if things get hectic around here, sometimes not everybody's on the same page. And that's okay. Everybody gets busy, and we just try to rectify it as soon as we can.
Right. So one of the things you mentioned in one of your previous answers is, you receive a notification on a daily basis from CyberSense. Fortunately for you, all is well.
Yeah, exactly right.
When you get those, but talk to me a little bit about the efficiencies of CyberSense and the PowerProtect cyber recovery solution. How has that made? You mentioned there's another network administrator. I'm sure there's others who have exposure to the vault and the the functionality that it's doing, the scanning and everything, the assurance, I guess, that it is really giving Dodge County. Talk a little bit about the efficiencies and how you and your team kind of gain some of the efficiencies from having the vault in place.
Sure. So I mean, as far as like efficiencies and or benefits, whatever, however you want to reference it, but it's it's the well-being of the backups are in the vault, and the backups are being scanned for abnormalities, and when you get that report that everything's good, it's okay. That's one less thing that we have to worry about around here, that the backups are good. They're in the vault, and they're good. And it's just we get them every day. The scans don't take a long time. It's there's obviously process of when those backups are copied to the vault, and when they're scanned, and that does take a little time. But for the most part, we would find out about a threat within 24 hours of the backup, which is that's pretty good. I'll take that. And it's just it just makes you feel a little better about the workloads, and it's one less thing you have to worry about. And we're not a big shop around here. We only have 11 people who get in the backup is 2. So it's
Gotcha.
we have a lot to worry about around here. And that's if you check that CyberSense report and it says success, and that's great. And if it doesn't say success, then it's then the day just got a little longer. And you got to check those that what's going on, and you find out what's going on, and that's where you go.
So let me follow up on that one comment too. If in the case of not success, right? If there is the dreaded red alert that something is gone awry, are you guys ready? How do you what's your level of preparedness you feel?
I feel pretty good. I mean, we do test our environment. I mean, as I've been at many Dell user protection groups, and they stress the whole time, like, test your backups, test your backups, test your backups. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. And yeah, it's time consuming, and yeah, it's not fun, and it's not exciting, but it's something you have to do. And I think we're in a good spot. We do test, and we do make sure that we have good copies of everything. And when we have had to restore, we haven't had to restore from the vault, but I mean, obviously we have had to restore in production or from DR. We have not had a problem. We've had a few growing pains, but that's expected. And those are fixed quickly. Those aren't those aren't showstoppers. They're just something that you have to work through. And since then we've implemented processes that alleviate the things that we have found, and that's what every organization needs to do is grow and make sure that you're learning from not, I wouldn't even call them mistakes. It's just learning from experience and going from there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, if I can really throw this into a layman's term, you're really banking on confidence here, right? You're the ability that you have in the face of a cyber threat or attack, regardless of how that attack has proliferated. It sounds like you guys are ready. And it sounds like you have that the reaction play in ready in case of emergency break glass. It sounds like you're ready to go ahead and do that.
I not that I want to really find out, but I think we're in I think we're in a pretty good place. I mean, we have been quote unquote hit in the past, but it's been what web servers and things like that, which is we've worked through that. I don't think there's many organizations that haven't had at least some kind of a a small hit as far as like malware or a web page being defaced or something like that. And we've worked through things like that. And it's one of those things. It's like fire insurance for your house. You have to have it. You just really just hope you never have to use it. And that's kind of how we look at our vault and we look at index engines. And it's outstanding to have, and it's something that every organization really should have. But you really just hope you never have to use it. But if you do have to use it, you want to be prepared. So
that's good. And so let me run through a couple points here before we wrap up. It sounds like you're doing everything you possibly can at the perimeter, right? Your best practices are there to keep folks out. From inside the walls, you're also protecting your data, and you're leveraging everything from DR sites to to multiple copies of your data, plus just your core backups. And then you have the data integrity aspect, which wraps around, CyberSense is wrapped around that with the Cyber Recovery Vault solution from Dell. And I think most importantly, we're here to talk about CyberSense and some of its benefits, but most importantly, I think from a preparedness perspective, you're ready to go. And it's been practiced, and you have best practices in play in order to be able to react to one of these potential threats. I think you're doing a great job, at least from my perspective. I know I'm not one of your constituents in town, but it gives me a little bit of that confidence that you're doing the best for your customers, the people of Dodge. So that is fantastic. Josh, any final comments? And
well, I mean, it's just with our vault and adding index engines on top of that vault, it's just a added layer of protection, and it's just a good fail safe to be able to scan your backups, and you can put all kinds of things. If you don't have index engines scanning the backups, if there's a problem with your backup in production, it's going to come over to the vault, and if there's a problem on one end, and there's going to be a problem on the other end, and if you don't have anything to alert you to it, you're going to have problems no matter how many copies of that data that you have. So that's what how we look at it, and just adding that extra layer of protection onto our data is just it makes sense for us.
So again, Josh, can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us today. Had some great insights. Really appreciate your outlook, as well as your insights into any imposing cyber attacks, especially at the municipality level. So I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. My guest today, Josh Kohlhoff from Dodge County. Thank you so much. I'm Rob Mossi from Index Engines, and once again, thank you for joining us on Ask the Experts.